Yes, welcome back and welcome, Kayode.
Yes, it's a pleasure to be here. It's another Saturday morning. You get these things at times, traffic gets really horrendous, and then it takes you an hour and a half to get to a place that you know should be just about 20 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I was saying that after a hectic week in Lagos, people want to go out and get a breath of fresh air in some rural area.
Yes.
So it's okay for them to be going out of town.
Yeah. What's today's date again? Yesterday was the 13th, Friday.
Friday the 13th.
Yes.
Thankfully, nothing disastrous happened.
Yes, thank God for
Thankfully.
that. Thank God for that.
Superstitious people.
Yeah.
Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th was yesterday, but today is 14th. It's bang in the middle of the month.
Yeah.
So I don't know why anybody will be, jetting out of Lagos in such large numbers.
But they do almost every weekend.
Okay, well, there's lots of parties. We love parties in Nigeria, don't we?
Breath of fresh air in some rural. Go to your village somewhere. Go chill. Prepared to come back tomorrow evening and face traffic jam in Lagos again. There's no traffic jam in those areas.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Well, welcome to Sunrise from myself. Kadi, I can tell me it's a pleasure to be here. And I guess we're going to start in earnest. You've gone through the menu.
Let's get this show started.
Let's get the show started.
And we're going to be looking at the cabinet shake-up. Ooh, that came as a surprise on Wednesday. Yes. I don't think anybody was expecting that.
No.
So the president fired 9 ministers. Who?
9 of them.
A large number, people say.
A large number, indeed. And it was a surprise, not only because nobody knew, but because of the caliber of some of the people that he got rid of.
Well, we're going to be analyzing that this morning, and it's my pleasure to welcome a public affairs analyst, Mr. Bala Zaka. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
We also expect Mr. Wale Ogunade and Barrister Malaki Ogumadu, as well as Gautima Lehman, to join us. I'm sure they're all in traffic, but they'll be joining us in the course of the program. But let's start with Bala Zaka. I'm sure Bala Zaka, on his own, will do justice to this topic. Now, Bala, what did you think on Wednesday when the news broke?
I think the news came to a lot of people as a surprise. But if you look at the interplay of activities in the country, we shouldn't be surprised, because there is this saying that you cannot or you shouldn't change a winning team. But I can tell you that Nigeria is still a monoproduct economy. Nigeria is still a heavily import-dependent country. And if it will take a kind of cabinet reshuffle that does not necessarily require the knowledge of the entire populace for changes to be brought into the system, so be it. I mean, we're talking about a situation where everybody knows that if you don't have economic power, you cannot have political power. As I speak to you today, I tell you, Nigeria does not have economic power, right? I mean, we don't even have money. Nigeria, I tell people, Nigeria is a poor country. And people keep saying, we have oil, we have oil. And I said, what you can do, we are just talking most of the time is we talk about economic growth, but not economic development. Because how much do you produce? What is your population? How can you compare Nigeria, a country of probably 170 million people, and a production of probably 2 million barrels per day, to a country like Saudi Arabia, that has probably 1/5 of our population and produces 4 times Nigeria, or a country like Angola that produces the equivalent of what we produce, but probably has 1/5 of our population.
Yeah.
How do you compare? And beside that, most of the time when even people talk about the 2 million barrels per day, 2 million barrels, that money doesn't go to Nigeria. It does not belong to Nigeria, based on the relationship that Nigeria has with its partners, on whether it is joint venture or production sharing agreement. But a lot of people will say, Nigeria is producing 2 million barrels per day. They pick their calculator. What's the price of crude oil per day? Today, Nigeria has produced this. So when you look at it from that angle, right, you will only say Nigeria is generating motion, but it's not moving.
I beg your pardon, Bala. You said Nigeria is a poor country. You'll have to convince a lot of people about that, because in this poor country,
Yes,
there are some very, very rich people.
how do you define economic growth and economic development? When you talk about economic growth, you're just talking about aggregation. You're talking about indices. You're talking about numbers. But when you talk about countries that move and have political power after economic powers, are companies that see signs of development. And how do you see development? You see it in your educational institutions. If you give foreign students scholarships to come and study in Nigerian university, they are not coming. If I tell you, you know it yourself. When you talk about capital flight only on the aspect of education, nearly every parent that can afford is sending his or her word outside the country. What will you say about our medical institutions?
I hear that Ghana alone made about 1.5,
Exactly.
1.6 billion.
Most of
that
you
money.
see countries that are now agents, to foreign universities. What can you say about the state of our medical constituency? If you go, basic scanning machines are not there. How many foreign, you see, that's the way you do the comparison. How many people actually will comparatively come into your country because of medical care? How many people will come here because there is good tourism?
Now, so let's look at this cabinet shake-up itself, because I can see from all of what you're saying the possible implication and maybe by extension what may be happening. But even before we get to what may be happening in the near future, if this shake-up turn out to be one that brings in the quality of people to deliver the result that one would want for Nigeria. But look at what has happened. Events leading up to the shake-up of this cabinet. Do you think this is more of a political decision or one that is designed to bring in the quality of people that will lead us between now and 2015 to deliver the result that this government might want to deliver?
This is the best way I would want to respond to you. Regardless of how focused or visionary a leader is, if he doesn't have supportive lieutenants or subordinates, he's not going to perform. Just like the way you said, even if the election is credible, if the candidates are not credible, you're just wasting your time. In this case, we're talking about the context of an employer and employees. The terms were there. I don't know the criteria for the employment. I can tell you, probably it was based on political gestures or gratifications. I don't know. But for a visionary leader and a focused leader to move ahead and to do well, you need people that will be very, very supportive. But if at some points political colorations are brought in and people keep national interests aside, that will be an entirely different game. Because generally, when there is political distractions, you are never going to have economic development. People will never be focused. People will be fighting for their lives. And if ordinarily somebody was supposed to spend time or some money going to make sure places are commissioned, or going to initiate projects, or coming in with campaign, or trying to invite investors, all these monies will be spent on what? Probably likely propaganda to counter oppositions and the rest. But one thing people will always need to remember, especially leaders, they are always going to be remembered for, like I keep saying, two likely points. The problems you solve for your people and the problems you created for your people. Outside that, everything about you will be consigned to the dustbin of history. So it's left for the leaders.
Okay. A lot of people have expressed shock at the inclusion of the former Minister of Foreign Affairs in that list, because people see people say that he's one of those who actually performed in that cabinet. What is your feeling about that?
Well, like I said, when you are giving performance benchmark, you know, it's left to the person that gave you the benchmark or the criteria. At every point in time, you're supposed to be assessed. If you are below the curve, you are asked questions. And you are right on the curve or above the curve, then you are doing well. But as far as I'm concerned, a winning team should not be changed. But it depends.
Would you say that this is a winning team?
To be honest, it will be difficult for any Nigeria to tell you that we are doing well. The best anybody can tell you about Nigeria is that we are probably crawling out of the woods. That's the best anybody can tell you. Because there is virtually frustration everywhere. Before now, we used to say when you're passing through the strata of Nigerian villages, most of the hefty guys you see sitting and looking jobless were illiterates. But I can tell you, you go, nearly every family now has a fairly enlightened or educated person. Just take one index, electricity. The fact that there is no electricity, I can tell you probably more than 80% to 95% of Nigerians are not watching this program. People have come up with initiatives that will make them be independent, regardless of whether jobs are there or not. But just one index called electricity has messed up everything. And you know what? From time to time in the course of discussions, even the fuel scarcity, the refined product scarcity we used to experience was just as a function of lack of power or electricity. Because for every liter of petrol, as we call it, or diesel that you buy to go and power a generator, a diesel generator or a petrol generator, you are depriving an automobile. You are depriving either a small car or a truck of that fuel. Okay. So at the end of the day, you have situations where nothing really works. We're not people, I tell you, a lot of Nigerians are ready to go solo. But where is the initiative from the leaders? Where is the path that will thrust them into feeling they are going to be economically empowered to move forward?
I'm still quite keen to bring us to getting an understanding of the rationale behind the decision and possibly looking at, are there other things that might be at play in the decision? If you were to assess someone like the Minister of State for Defense, Erelu Obada.
Yes.
And you look at all the work that at least is in the media that she's been doing, and the going of her travels with the Nigerian Army, with the Navy, you're making sure that they have the different exercise that they do, the different things that they do on our maritime area. When you look at all of those things, and she seems to have been a key player in that sector, in making sure it happens, making sure she's there with them, she attends all of these events. The impression created is this is someone that is performing. So what is the key indicator for performance, and should that kind of person be dropped?